To help you understand the Lord of the Sabbath, what Yeshua said, I came upon this analogy as I was baking today on Shabbat. Not a violation. I wasn't baking to sell. I was just baking for myself to eat. And the Lord showed me this correlation between baking and Torah, as we've talked before about it, the instructions. In Isaiah 28, he says, since you're so foolish and lacking understanding, I have to teach you like babies who are still breastfeeding. Preface by preface, law by law, line by line, tzav letzav, kav lekav, so that you will stumble. Because the Torah was never given for the purpose of such legalistic observance by the strict letter of the law. It's to give you a reference point. Like when you're baking. If you're teaching your child to bake, he's never baked before, you give him a recipe. You have 1.5 cups flour, 1 tablespoon sugar, 1 teaspoon baking soda. He doesn't know how to see the amounts. So he has to use a measuring cup, a measuring spoon, a teaspoon, and sometimes even a digital scale, as you see some of those people on YouTube. Well, it says 500 grams of flour. They put a digital scale, they go 49, 498, and then it goes 502, and then they take a little off, so it's exactly 500, as if those 2 grams of flour are gonna ruin your bread. But it's what they do. That's the Pharisees. Now, it's a wonderful place to begin because you don't know any different. You don't have enough expertise. You haven't lived it in order to know the amount by heart. You see a teaspoon, I'm just gonna wing it. No. Stick to the recipe. Use the measuring spoon, and after you've done it 10, 20, 50, 100 times, whenever, when you've already experienced enough failures and successes that you can now evaluate by sight, by your evaluated experience, how to put it without following the strict letter of the law, that is when you can kind of wiggle around it. Not before. Yeshua wasn't violating Shabbat when he walked with his Talmidim and they plucked some heads of grains to eat. He wasn't violating Shabbat when he was healing those people, when he told that one guy to pick up his mat and walk. He wasn't violating Shabbat, no. It might have seemed that way by the strict reading of the law without the proper understanding. You shall do no work. Well, what is work? What is work? Does he talk about any physical effort? Anything that exhausts your muscles? Well, chewing is work. Digestion is work. Breathing, that's a lot of work. Walk into the bathroom. So, what is work? That's not the meaning. It doesn't say you should not do those functional things of life. It just means don't focus on your occupation. Don't focus on the materialism, to profiteer, your merchandise, your clientele. Don't do those things, but focus on the Lord. It is a day for holiness, to focus on the things of heaven. Yeshua wasn't doing carpentry, which was his father's profession. Yosef was a carpenter. He was healing people. That was the work of God, the work of heaven. And when his Talmidim were walking, they plucked some heads of grains. Well, it does tell you don't do any work, right? But they weren't harvesting to sell. They were just hungry and picked some stuff along the way to eat. That's not really a violation. And he knew all of these things. That's why he said, I'm the Lord of Shabbat. I know these things. I don't have to go by the strict letter of the law. I know the meaning of it. I can put a tablespoon without actually using a tablespoon. Like I did this morning. I just improvised a cake. Didn't follow a specific recipe, just a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little salt, banana, apple, and blueberries, tablespoon of, a little this, a little that. Didn't use any measuring things. I don't have to. I've done it plenty of times that I can know what it should look like. I know the consistency of the batter to know if it needs more liquids or if it's too wet and it needs more flour. I can tell how much is a teaspoon of baking soda so that it will rise properly. I can tell when it's ready in the oven. I don't have to really have a timer. I just kind of look at it. Sometimes I use a toothpick, see if it's done. Because of the experience. I don't have to follow the letter of the law, the instruction, which is Torah. Torah means instruction. You can say I'm the Lord of baking. Well, that wouldn't be accurate because I'm not the Lord of it. But for the purpose of helping you understand, I don't need to follow the Torah of baking this cake. I can have the spirit of it because I know what I'm doing. So even if I don't do it exactly, maybe a little less, maybe a little more, it's gonna turn out fine because I know what I'm doing. Now, like I said in the other message yesterday, the day before, sometimes you do everything right and it still goes wrong. But that's a different story. As much as we can do, you could be a little off, but you're still in the spirit of it. And that makes you on, that makes you right. Because you understand it. And that's the purpose. Too many people take God for some strict tyrant that wants everything just right. That's what religious people do, the Hasidics in particular. With their tefillin and everything has to be so precise. You hold your hand 40 centimeters above the table and you lean to the left for 5 minutes and you say these words. But none of it comes from God. That is what man does. The Lord is much more lenient. The Lord is spirit. Spirit just flows. He gives you measures because, again, you gotta have some sort of a point of reference. A tablespoon. Does it have to be precisely straight, 15 grams? No, it could be 17 grams. It could be 12 grams. That's fine. You're still within the margin of success. But it tells you that so that you will know not to put 2 grams or not to put 50 grams, right? So it kind of puts you within that region of what it needs to be. When I give people recipes, they ask me for recipes, I kind of, make out of my own mind what it should look like so they can kind of replicate my recipe. I don't know the exactness of it because I don't do it exactly like that. But, based on what I know that I'm doing, I kind of round it up. If you want to make a recipe, I'll write it out for you. But then the legalistic one would find the recipe and say, he said 1 teaspoon, you put too much, you're a sinner, you violate the recipe. Well, the Shabbat is spirit, the Lord is spirit. If you honor the holiness of Shabbat, you know it's not a day for you to do what you want, the things of this life, but to honor the Father, celebrate Him, be with Him, give Him the glory, then you're fine. It's not about what you do per se. It's about where your heart is and where your spirit is. So that's what it means that Yeshua is Lord of Shabbat. He understands because He is the Word of God. It is by Him that all things were made. Obviously, the Shabbat included. So, praise Papa. I hope this helps.